You're listening to The Angry Designer, where we cut through the industry bull to help frustrated graphic designers survive and thrive.
What's up, angry designers? So I'm trolling Instagram like I normally do, and on a daily basis, as well as Reddit and TikTok and everywhere else where I find inspiration. And there is this haunting, handsome guy following me everywhere I go. It's like I see him here, I see him here. He's telling me these stories, and I'm just, it's creeping me out everywhere I look. I mean, this guy's face is all over the place, and he's giving us good information. And sure enough, doesn't he reach out and be like, you guys are crazy? I mean, just stop. And conversation started, and we are here today to present our friend from down under, but maybe not quite so down under, Mr. James Barnard.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I properly stalked you guys, didn't I? I was like, please, can I be on the podcast?
We're this close to a restraining order.
Everyone else is. yeah. Seriously. Sort your shit out.
But, in Canada, restraining order is, please stop. Please stop following.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're hurting our feelings. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's right.
What's up, man?
It's amazing to finally actually chat to you guys in person. I'm a big fan of the podcast. Like we were saying before, yeah, I discovered you guys via Alan Peters, so I'm quite new to your podcast, and maybe only a month or two of episodes I've actually listened to, but I'm hoping you guys are going to be as chipper as you normally are, because
it's early.
7 a.m. where you're on the coffee rather than the bourbon today.
Yeah, there's no bourbon. There is Starbucks, so we'll keep away from the bourbon. So
there it is, Irish.
Something today we tried. Yes, we did. This week's was.
Yes.
Yeah, it's 7 in the morning here, so we got up extra early for you. But for you, it's like 10 at night, right? 9 o'clock at night.
It's 9 o'clock at night. Yeah. But this is like standard for me, because of the horrible time difference in Australia. I am constantly burning the midnight oil, and especially when I want to talk to places like London in business hours, I've got to be kind of pulling these hours. So I just start a little bit later in the morning. I start my day like midday and just work from there.
So this is a normal thing then. See, because I just assumed if people down in Australia, I mean, it's a big enough country to hold its own. But you're right. This is so much a global economy right now. What we're dealing with, what we do, we serve every corner of the earth. So I guess you do have to accommodate a little bit, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the reasons why I've had so much success with the kind of logo design business and the sort of social media side of things, is because I'm targeting places like the States, places like Europe and England, where I'm from. But I can live the life in Australia, and where they don't pay anything for graphic design. It's like pulling teeth trying to get paid down here. So yeah, it makes sense for me to kind of target that global market. And there's no reason that I really need to be in a sort of time zone where it's more convenient, other than I get a little bit more sleep. But if I can target the world as my client, then I'm absolutely going to do that.
It is good. So you did say something funny though. See, all this time, I mean, let's just expose you as a fraud here right now, because all this time I thought you were Australian, right? You got the accent from Brisbane. You drop the Australian vibe, and then Brisbane, yeah. and then we find out. You're UK. You're like an expat, and you moved to Australia, which I thought was impossible to do. I thought it was a closed country and they didn't let anybody in. And you jumped in at the worst possible time, didn't you?
You married into it.
I did. I emigrated in the middle of the pandemic during a lockdown. So the story is, I'm from the UK. Yeah. I'm English. We lived in London with my Australian wife, who was missing the sort of call of home. So in 2021, we packed up, rented out our house, got on a plane, landed in Brisbane, which is where her parents live, which is the reason we sort of targeted this area. And we had to do 2 weeks of quarantine in a hotel in Brisbane.
That's right.
With a 2-year-old daughter. So we were stuck in we got a suite. Okay, so we got really lucky. Like the stories of other people got these tiny little rooms and had to stay in there for 2 weeks. We got a suite. We were allowed beer delivered, so it wasn't that bad. We had a kitchenette, and there was a TV, and it wasn't. We couldn't get weird things delivered. Like they wouldn't let us have gym equipment, so we couldn't even do any kind of remote working out. We had to go on YouTube and just jump up and down in the living room to kind of stay active.
Your daughter's thinking it's
yeah. What are you doing? Well, we used her as like a weight, because it was the only thing we were allowed. So she sat on our back while we were doing press ups.
Try to get mileage out of having children. I agree.
That's right. Yeah. What else are they good for otherwise?
But it's kind of cool. Oh, we can have a lot of stories about
Wait,
that, my
I
friend.
smell a spin-off, The Angry Parent. Would you be our first
you go.
guest?
Yeah, that's the next.
Do nothing to do with design. Just talk about how shit it is being a dad.
Oh god, dude, I got 4 kids.
Yeah.
So my youngest is 7,
Wow.
and my oldest is 14. I got 2 in the middle there.
I'm always suspicious of anybody that has more than 2 kids. I'm like, are you just like into sort of self-flagellation?
Right.
Like,
The jump from
like-
2 to 3 is unreal.
that's
It
the
just
I
becomes.
found the jump from 1 to 2 was enough for me. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
And they beat the shit out
You're
of me
in the
on a
middle.
daily
You're
basis.
in the middle.
Like I tell everybody like I'm in the trenches right now. 'Cause it is like full on like labor and like psychological warfare as well. My daughter, she's just like, I'm not talking to you, Daddy. I'm talking to Mummy. And it's like, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Hey, wait till she turns 12. That's all I gotta say.
Please don't.
Jeez. Oh my god, that's amazing. So I mean, the Australia jump over was kind of interesting, obviously. And I mean, now it was crazy back then. You're kind of probably looking at some really good memories. But what about adjusting? I mean, your business was at what stage when you made this jump?
Pretty new in terms of like the niching down thing. So I went freelance, I think it was like 7 or 8 years ago. But when the sort of pandemic hit, my daughter was, I think, like 1 or something like that. She's really, really young. And at that time, I was doing the stay-at-home dad thing. My wife earned way more than I did. So she, carried on at work, and I did the stay-at-home dad thing for something like 10 or 11 months. But just sort of keeping a freelance career trickling along with the odd client here or there that I could do when she was asleep, but nowhere near as kind of like upscaled as I did when I got here. And when I got here, I kind of really sort of ramped it up a lot more. I did a lot more work on my website and the SEO side of things. And then, well, I had really good SEO in London, but just before I left, so I think like Logo Designer London was the key term that I'd like nailed. I was top for that.
Cool.
I think it was freelance Logo Designer London. I was number 1 on Google. I was like, yes. And then I moved to Australia and fucked it all. So I had to kind of start from scratch in that respect.
Now that has changed. There used to be a point where you could work on your site, you could start getting decent rankings. You could play the game because you could almost understand what Google was looking for. But then they started unloading all these new domains. Now it's not just .com, .ca, but then there's like .it. Every country's got their own dot.
Yeah,
then they
I have a .co.
Right.
I couldn't get a .com.
Right,
Yeah,
which is crazy, right?
.co.
Exactly. And then so now there's not you're not battling one site, you're battling 20 sites with the same name and with the same title. It's It just seems like it's almost an impossible game at this point to try to win. Are you still focusing on SEO? Have you switched over to social?
It's social. It's like it's such a massive swing in terms of leads for me. I think it's like 85%. I worked out the other day is my leads is from social media.
Wow.
And so I got to go where the love is, right?
Yep.
If there's that many leads coming through from there, then I'm totally going to start creating content for them. But I have a blog on my site, so I'm trying to keep the content sort of fresh, and I obviously update the portfolio. So it is kind of keeping the yes, Google, we're still here kind of mentality, and keeping the content still going. But yeah, in those early days when I was sort of trying a bit harder with SEO, it wasn't that hard, honestly. I wrote a few articles, changed the structure of the content on my site, got a little bit of a website background, like I used to know WordPress, so I could just do a few things and write some articles and change the landing pages and just put a lot of keywords in there. And in the space of like a couple of months, there I was, number 1 for freelance Logo Designer London, and that really helped. Like the leads went crazy, but it was enough to keep me going.
Enough to keep you going in the flip side until you built up this side. So your story, though, even getting into this, is a lot different than the rest of us. I mean, some people had the very traditional story, schooling, out of school, internship, what have you. I kind of always knew what I wanted. You were more traditional, and then freelance. So you kind of went into this backwards because you start. Well, let's talk about your story. I mean, again, you went to school for
music, multimedia, and electronics. I was a drummer that wanted to be a record producer. I used to play drums in a band in school.
See, it's like I'm looking at the same guy here. Look, doppelganger. You guys look the same.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Dude, I wish I still had a drum kit.
Oh, you
it
don't
was one of
play
the things
anymore?
I kind of had to. I can't. No, I just can't. There's like neighbors everywhere, and the kids would destroy it. So when I get rich and famous, I'm going to get a room, and that isn't the corner, of the house for my office. It's going to be a room with padded and egg boxes on the walls and the soundproof stuff. Yeah. But yeah, I wanted to be a music producer, so I went to school to to study that, and I learned like Pro Tools and all of the sort of sound engineering side of things. But one of my modules at university was HTML, so we learnt like table-based websites, and this would have been like 2003, 2006,
I
forget.
remember.
That's right.
Yeah. So I learned my first website was built on the sort of university servers in tables. I was like, that's pretty cool. And then I kind of picked up Photoshop to compress a few images. But then I went to a job as a researcher in London. I just basically moved to London, tried to find a job. Ended up as this researcher for this sort of PR database, and obviously I worked there for like 4 years and really didn't enjoy it because it was just kind of grunt office work and database entry, super demoralizing stuff. But in the job, I picked up a copy of Photoshop to create a company intranet, and kind of started this side hobby of wanting to be a web designer.
Right.
Made a company intranet in WordPress for the entire staff, and they loved it. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I started doing sort of free websites on the side for like a local chiropractor and a local interior designer, and I look back on them now, and they were beyond shit. But, I was doing them for free. I thought they were amazing at the time.
You get what you pay for.
I gave them away. Yeah, I used it as like to build a portfolio. I think I got like 3 or 4 websites. So I started out as like a web designer,
No.
inverted commas. So yeah, I used that portfolio, inverted commas portfolio, to get a job. I totally blagged a job at Runner's World magazine in London. So at the time I was into running. I was running marathons, and I thought there's a total sort of marry up here. I've got a little bit of design skills, but I'm a super junior, but I'm totally into running. Maybe they'll take me on because of my kind of passion for, jogging.
Awesome.
At the time. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. So I got a proper junior role. At the age of like 25, I went backwards and took a massive pay cut to take on this junior design role. And I was basically thrown in the deep end, creating digital banners, flash adverts, email newsletters, little landing pages for the sort of the advertising side of this magazine.
Yep.
And then while I was there, obviously surrounded by magazine designers, learned print. So it was backwards for me. I started in digital, learned print on the job. So to this day, I feel completely out of my comfort zone in print still. Because it was always like a secondary thing for me. So yeah, when I heard your podcast about all of these little print techniques, I was like, yes, I am.
It's such a, like, it's this hole that people don't know. Because I mean, it's still a very viable medium in our world. Granted, it's not the number one because so much of the world has gone digital, but it's completely the opposite. Like, the little bit of print knowledge that you think you have is miles ahead of what's already out there, which is really sad. Because I mean, even in school, they're not doing a great job teaching it. You don't hear, many people. Obviously, we've got some people and some acquaintances, like our friend from the Quickie podcast, who's trying to make an effort to teach people print, but it seems like people aren't giving it the love it needs.
No.
I did a post on my socials about Rich Black.
I remember that.
How you make
Beautiful.
Rich Black, and
so
the
nerdy.
comments.
I love it.
I know it was proper geek out. But the comments, I was blown away by the amount of people that just had no idea about it. I thought I was teaching people to suck eggs. I was like, you guys have heard about this before, right? And then everyone was like, what the fuck? And then it was just nuts. Like, so just little things like that. I was like, okay, well then that's interesting. Maybe I'll just do a little bit more content around that, and started doing a couple of posts about like why you print in CMYK versus RGB, and again that one blew up, and it's like, okay, well, people fucking don't know anymore.
I know.
No one's designing for print.
But I mean,
Well,
don't they
obviously
see
they are,
the
but,
difference? Because I mean, they're designing something digitally. When you do print it out, whether it's a business card or a flyer or whatever, you can see it doesn't look like on screen, and you'd think people would make more of a connection. But I'm just wondering if people are accepting shitty colored print documents nowadays. It's just everywhere. A lot of our clients we focus very much on the B2B side of the world, right? So print is still very big. There's still a lot of trade shows. There's still a lot of face-to-face meetings. But the other side, I'm wondering, so much of the B2C world is done online that I wonder if print is even, obviously it's not as important as we feel it is.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about the kind of the methods to do the print material these days, like specifically when you're getting merch printed on something like Redbubble or one of those printable websites, their software is so good at conversion that you kind of don't need to worry about it. They kind of handle that all for you, so you can force through this beautiful RGB image, and they'll just kind of go, we know what to do, and they'll fix it for you and match it up. So maybe there's this kind of like a sort of skill, like a miss of skills there, like where there's like you kind of getting away with it for so long, you don't actually have to
actually
know
push
as much about print.
But you have to admit, when you get a package, when you get, my wife subscribes to these boxes that come in, and they're beautiful, like the colors and then the experience in opening it. There is something to be said. It's very analog, the experience, right? You're opening, you're touching, you're feeling, it's the crinkling of the paper. One of the best experiences about buying a flippin' Apple product is that opening experience, the box opening package experience, right? Definitely. So there's a little.
That was
bit
always something that I loved, because I started out as a digital designer. Anytime I had something printed in the office, or I got to work on like a magazine page, I was like, I get to hold it. I can touch the design that I just made. And no one gives a shit when you design something online and you share it on Facebook. Look what I did. Like, yeah. But when you can hold it in your hands and go, look, I made that. That's fucking amazing.
It's so true, right? It does. All right. So then you were in the magazine world for then quite a while, right? And you were actually learning on the job design. Like, did you ever make the jump to actually designing some layouts and such?
Yeah, I did. So they got me to do the promotional pages for Runner's World and Men's Health magazine. So I was, again, thrown in the deep end, didn't have a clue what I was doing. Was throwing 100% black images, black sort of boxes, and people were going, add the shiners, and I was like, what's a shiner? And like little things like that. I just had no idea about anything, so I learned very quickly on the job. Didn't even know how to use InDesign, if I'm honest, because I was learning everything in Photoshop. And so luckily I had a team of really good sort of in-house designers that taught me and sort of really helped me build my sort of print experience. And from there I bounced to another magazine house, met my wife at Bauer Media. She was on the radio side, so we were sort of working together there. I then went to the Daily Telegraph, which is a national newspaper in the UK.
See?
Did loads
the same, I
of
tell
print
you.
there.
I worked in newspaper.
So
for
I worked on the
15
marketing
years.
team.
Oh, nice.
So I was on they had like a massive sort of commerce side to the business. They had everything from like newsletters about gardening to sort of travel. So there's all sorts of shit that they were selling, and I was basically doing promotional pages and adverts inside the paper as well as online. So and that was like, Sean knows how much pressure that job was. It was a daily national newspaper.
Yes.
The turnover was insane.
Yes.
So that was a proper sink or swim job. Like if you didn't keep up there, you were just out. Like, and really long hours, really fast paced. It was kind of, I think I lasted like just over a year before I was kind of so burnt out that I went somewhere else. It was great. It was a great experience, and I learnt loads, and I actually that was my first kind of managerial position where I had a junior and I could take them on and teach them a little bit.
Cool.
And then I moved to another newspaper, the Times and the Sun, as part of their internal marketing team.
Oh, wow.
And it was worse. I was told that it was going to be like an agency space, and I would have project managers and people that would sort of help me out and relieve me from sort of the feeling like it was like clients hitting me every day in the head. It was worse. It was more stressful, more fast paced, and I lasted 6 weeks before I left. I was like, it was so bad. I'm sure they won't mind me saying, but it was just an absolutely soul destroying role. And I was like, what have I done? I left a pretty high intense job with at least colleagues that I liked and got on well with, to a place where I was being managed by someone who wasn't so great, and the high pressure side of things was just brutal. So I left and went freelance. I went freelance to pay the bills while I found another role. Yeah. And immediately discovered this freelance life is the tits. So I'm not going back. Yeah.
So then your jump, but again, you said it did start small. Like it started slow when you did freelance from there. Like you didn't even work agency at all. You went magazine to freelance.
Yeah.
And again,
Yes,
that jump, and then again, so you were doing, and you came from a layout background. So then, what were your first freelance gigs?
So I was lucky, like while I was working at some of those magazines, I was freelancing for other departments. So I had a little bit of a sort of relationship with a few of the project managers across a load of different magazines. So when I went freelance, I had a little bit of kind of beer money trickling. But this is the point where I went to agencies on a day rate. So I was a freelancer, sort of gun for hire. I went to every single recruiter in London looking for a job. And they were like, we haven't got much in a way of permanent, but if you want some agency work just to kind of fill the gap while you look for something new, there's this, and this. And I just, as soon as I got in that first agency and the agency went back, he's quick, he's efficient, then word kind of got around and I started bouncing around loads of different agencies in London. Excuse me. And they again were pretty fast paced, but another sort of huge learning curve there as well. But I got to, work on some huge campaigns across loads of different big agencies in London and really got some great experience there. So yeah, for a few years, I was a freelancer kind of gun for hire. I would go into an office, sit in the corner of my laptop and do what they told me. I was usually working on pitches. So, I'd go in and help them out in a really fast paced environment for like maybe a week until they eventually pitched, and then I was kind of move on, go somewhere else. So yeah, it was really good fun. And then COVID hit, lockdown, everybody started working from home. Yeah. My daughter was born, total slowdown on the work. So I thought, okay, I need to kind of get some retainer clients going here. And it was again reaching out. I worked for a restaurant. I worked for a few different brands and had them on sort of rolling retainer. And then thought, I basically watched every video by Chris Do. Okay, so I wanted to learn about the business of design and like how to better sell my services, and realized like I wasn't getting as much as I could out of this. I could sell myself a lot better. I can manage my time a lot better, and then his advice was basically, if you've got enough experience behind you, you can niche down into an area and make yourself an expert within that niche, and then people will come to you for certain types of jobs. Because I was under the impression for ages that you had to have this broad set of skills in order to appeal to clients, so you can actually cover everything like web design, print design, logo design. But then by niching down and becoming the expert in one area, it's easier to find clients because they find you more easily. And that's totally what I did. I rewrote everything on my website, decided logo design is the way forward now, because it was the part of the industry I enjoyed the most. That was the reason I think I went into sort of logo design. I've tried everything.
Yeah, no. So, fair enough. So when you were doing retainer stuff, you were doing regular work, banners, month-to-month type work. Now, the logo side of the world, and again, I'm a huge fan of niche. We niche in a very different way. While we are still generalists as an agency, we've niched our area of expertise, like our industry, and that has worked wonders for us. It's the best thing we could have done. But again, we're still, broad, offering a breadth of services to a small market, where you're offering a very niche service to a big market. So I live and breathe retainers. Is your world just, hunt to eat, like you're constantly hunt, kill, eat, hunt, like it's a very different world, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, you're right. Like because I had that retainer and I wasn't enjoying that retainer work, if I'm honest. It was for two major clients that I was doing the same kind of work over and over and over again. And I was waking up in the morning to a list of things to do. And it was kind of, if I'm honest, a little bit boring because it was so repetitive. Whereas the logo design stuff was like pure creation, starting from scratch from a blank canvas, making something for a client and building a brand for someone from scratch. And I was like, ugh, I love it. You can kind of throw up your ideas and come up with something that's purely from your heart. And I thought, okay, if I'm gonna make this work, I need to start basically taking this more seriously, and I need to slowly start to fire these retainer clients. And it took about 6 months for me to get enough logo design business in to eventually say to this last client, okay, I'm sorry, I can't do any more retainer work for you anymore. It's been great. Thanks for all the love and appreciate it, but I've got to move on to pastures new. And that was fucking scary because that was regular monthly income that I just decided to kind of fuck myself and go, I need to and if I'm going to do this, I need to actually do it. Yeah. And firing that client was the first step, and it was bloody scary. So that first month where I didn't have that regular paycheck, and I was like, oh shit, I've got to get like regular logo design work now. Yeah, it was bloody scary.
And I mean, was your wife working at that time?
Yep, she was. So She luckily managed to keep her job from the UK while we were here in London.
Sweet.
So she was working remotely. So yeah, it was all. I mean, there's a bit of a weird overlap with how it all worked out, but there wasn't much. It was bad for maybe a month or so, and then things started sort of ticking over. But then I think sort of 6 months after I properly niched, I decided to put my prices on my website, because I was getting loads and loads of inquiries from people saying, "Can you do my logo for free? I've got $50. Can you do it for, And I was
Of course. Can I?
Yeah, it's kind of insulting. Obviously at that time, the world of Fiverr, people were just kind of getting them for absolutely nothing, and trying to argue that with people, the value of it was really, really tough. And so I decided to put like a floor price on my website, which I thought was reasonable. Turned out it wasn't so reasonable, and got no leads in 2 months. And that was fucking scary, because my cash flow dried up completely. And I tried everything to kind of sort of solve the wound. I cut the prices in half. That didn't work. I then put some paid advertising behind my website. That was a disaster. And then eventually took them back off again, and just got as many sort of incoming leads coming through. And then I'd sort of massage them slowly back to the point where I could get a little bit of money coming in.
And this is when you were getting a lot of your
dire.
leads from your website, not obviously through social.
Yeah.
I wonder how different
social,
that would be
because
now.
social thing hadn't taken off yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's just the value is hard. I mean, it's impossible to just kind of base what the value is of a logo just based on a number, right? And I could totally see how that backfires. But you offered 3 packages, and you still do have 3 different packages on there.
That's right. Yeah. So what I did was, there's like a startup, professional, and deluxe package. I need to come up with better names.
Yeah,
for this. They're
that's all
pretty
right.
But the startup, it was like the floor. It's a logo and a style guide. That's basically all you get. And I at least sort of throw in a 1-page style guide with every logo project, so that they at least know the hex codes for their company and what their fonts are. So I was giving that away. But essentially it was JPEGs, EPSs, and PNGs, and I was like, okay, that's the price for that. Yep. Everything else, anything you want on top of it, inquire for a price. So that floor price, though, was apparently still too much for some people, everybody.
Yeah.
And it being the internet, they just bounced to a competitor.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it was a weird. Even when I took the prices off, I still got paid the same. It was just the fact that first initial inquiry, without me getting the opportunity to rationalize why it costs that much, what you're actually getting, and actually talk to the client, maybe massage a little bit more out of them. They were just bouncing to a competitor, and I got absolutely no work for 2 months. It was awful.
Yeah, and it changed when you got rid of the pricing. You were able to start selling, talking to people, selling them the value. So do you think it was solely based on price, or do you think it's because the human component was missing? Because now, obviously, if they want the price, they have to reach out, start that conversation, because it's just it's just as much about liking the person, having that connection, as it is about the dollar figure, right? Because sometimes we've taken jobs, it just, the personality fit wasn't there, and it just, in the end, it wasn't worth the money, even if the money was great.
Right. There's also projects that I'd missed out on that I probably would have taken on the cheap because they were cool. During that whole period, I won one job, and it was a lead through Reddit.
Yeah.
Okay, someone contacted me through one of my posts on Reddit.
Cool. At
the time, I was doing little time-lapse videos of me making logos. And a motorcycle club from Texas asked me to do their badge. And this is the best job ever.
Yeah.
I'll do it. Almost for nothing. I think I got like $500 for it or something like that. And I was like, I'll happily would have taken on jobs like that were cool, and maybe had a bit of a longer lead time in order just to do the project, because I just wanted to do it so much. So that was really interesting. Like, I got a lead not through my website that totally worked, and was kind of willing to do from a totally different source rather than through the website. So it was clear that the website pricing just was not working. Just the psychology of it, that seeing that hard price set in stone like that was just off-putting for so many people. There was no chance for me to talk to them. There was no chance for me to kind of rationalize why it cost that much, and they would just go somewhere else. So yeah.
So what is that customer experience with you? Like, obviously it starts with a lead of some sort, whether it's through social. We'll get into that more, of course, because you are the king of social. But whether it's through social, or whether it's from Reddit or whatever, then what does it look like?
So they initially, right now, it looks like a form. Yeah. So I've recently kind of got serious with it, and I was getting so many leads come through, and copying and pasting things into an Excel document. It was becoming a nightmare. It goes through a sort of a questionnaire form. It's very, very simple, though. It's like, who are you? Give me a loose overview of what you're after. here are some budget ranges. Where do you kind of slot into that? So it's not like it's going to cost this much. Oh, look out. It's like, what is your current budget right now? And so I get an idea for like how big their company is straight off the bat. And from there, if they're serious and the timelines work, then we'll jump on a call. So that's usually, I'll go back with like a sort of ballpark. Okay, if they've set the budget quite low, I'll maybe go, okay, well, you're not quite there in terms of where I'm working. Here's where I sort of the ballpark of where I usually start. If you're willing to have a chat about it, let's jump on a call. And that's a much more sort of soft approach, and it actually guides people into that okay, maybe it's going to cost a bit more, but we can talk about it. And there's areas that I can cut back on. I can reduce deliverables, and the timings can extend. And having that conversation rather than this is what it's going to cost, it's my way or the highway, this just will not work. And from there, it's like, the usual is the logo discovery, and then, well, you know how it works.
So do you find that, when they come in at a lower figure than you'd want to work with to start, do you think that it's because they're just trying to lowball, they're trying to get the best for the least, or do you do, eh? And then so that upsell ends up. So you're not selling value. Are you selling additional items? Like, how are you bringing that rate up for people?
Kind of, yes. So there's two ways I look at it. There's one. A lot of the leads that I get through social are your mom and pop shops, or people who are starting up new brands that are they don't quite have the budget. But it's not necessarily means that I'm not going to work with them. It just means that they might need to ramp up to it, and I might need to kind of guide their hands slightly. But then when you get an email from someone and you see, you check them out a little bit and you do your research and you realize these guys have got some cash to spend, that's when I'll tailor that approach slightly and, talk about the value of the logo and how that might work for them. So it's it's not like a process that's set in stone.
Of course.
It totally depends who reaches out to me. And like I say, there are some projects where it's so cool. Let's say it's like a bookstore that's a really new up and coming like kind of brand that I want to be a part of. I will totally drop my price to work with them, as long as other things kind of are sort of swapped out. So maybe the timeline extends, or we work on maybe an exchange of professional services. There might be something, like a tech company, and I want some goodies. I'll do it that way, or a bit of merch, or some
or
people who are
gold
consultants. There we go. Yeah, you've heard that story. Gold bar.
He gets his gold
absolutely
bar, and he's like, "Look, I just got a gold bar for a job."
That's awesome.
I did a logo for the Finnish Gold Reserve. It's an unofficial Finnish Gold Reserve. It's like a gold reseller, recycler, and storage place in Helsinki, Finland. And the gold bar, they paid part of their invoice in 10 grams of 24 karat gold, and I got this little package of FedEx from the post, and I posted about it, and everyone was like, "Don't open the package because it devalues the gold." I was like, "Fuck you! I want to hold it. I want to have it in my hands and rub it every day for luck." And, and that was amazing though, because I was like, okay, I want some gold. Let's do a little switcheroo of services here. And I think it was they got some advertising templates, some InDesign templates, and a logo animation in return for 10 grams of
10
gold.
grams. I love that, right?
Yeah,
that's amazing. It's like the things that we do, right? But I mean, again, is trade is it something that you actively continue to pursue, like finding other methods of payment?
Yeah, so I get quite a lot of designers reach out to me and offer, can I help you in your role? And fortunately, I have a very good assistant who I've recently hired, because things have ramped up so much, and I'm finding that I'm spending a lot of time on doing things like creating brand style guides and templates that are maybe not the best use of
your
time. Someone has started, has come in. She's a lovely lady called Beatrice, and she's from she lives in Germany, and she has a very, very competitive hourly rate. Let's just put it that way. She's amazing and works really, really quickly. So that kind of doesn't work in the design side of things, but yeah. Tech companies who've got the goodies and can send me stuff for free. I always like that. And, like gold bars. That's the big one.
That's great.
So yeah, I honestly, it totally depends on the client and who they are. So that's why I kind of like the process now, whereas it's really tailored, and I check each lead individually and I check them out and actually do my own research on them to kind of see whether I really want to work with this person or
so
not.
Is it just based on price when you just can't get there with a person, or have you found there been other reasons why you just couldn't get to that point?
I've got a little rule: no religion, no politics. Right?
Fair.
Anything that's too diversive or not something that I don't quite agree with, I won't do it.
It's hard to.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some people like to just charge the moon for projects like that when they don't want to do them, but sometimes they say yes, and then you're buggered. Yeah,
it's true.
You kind of at a point where they want to pay you 20 grand, and like, oh, I don't really want to work with these guys, but there's so much money.
Yeah,
so,
it's true.
Yeah, so it's a small sort of field of people that I won't work with, but I do like getting paid, so it's a very small window.
Wait. Have you actually taken on one of these that you've regretted?
No,
I haven't. Okay, just absolutely shut it down.
Yeah, shut that down. Yeah, no
that's
way.
funny. And yet he goes on about Alan Peters, and that's completely the opposite, right? Because he is very much, you see him with political, and you do see him within his religious circle as well, which is But again,
the
it's
work
still
is awesome with that too. So.
But at the same time, it's an interest for him, and he is genuinely interested in both of those, right? Between the religion and then between the politics. So that makes sense for him, right? Yeah,
but his work kind of speaks for itself in that regard.
It transcends.
It's not about the. Yeah, it kind of does. It's so inspiring and so reductive that he's just like the king of the badge. And I've chatted with him, and this is one of the great things about my recent success on social is that I've got access to people like Alan Peters and James Martin, who are now like my pals. And that's a year ago I wouldn't have been able to say that, and now I'm getting to hang out with these guys and talk to them on a daily basis and learning from them as well. And I got to chat to Alan Peters for a good hour, like you guys did, and I learned so much from that guy.
You talked to Chris Do as well. How scary is
that? I did.
Sean's all scared of Chris.
He frightens me.
Oh, he's bloody intimidating.
He's intense.
Do you want to tell you the story of what happened?
Smart.
It was really weird. I have a pal of mine in the UK runs a podcast called He Shoots, He Draws. And I got on his podcast. He knows Chris because he's done events and he's been in a cab with him at one point. And I found out Chris was going to be in Brisbane for this conference. And I was like, right, I'm never going to see him again. He's in Australia. Yeah. He's like an hour down the road from me right now. I messaged him on Instagram, and he's so popular on social media. There wasn't a hope in hell of me getting through to him. I spoke to my pal Dave, and he was like, "Oh, I know him. I'll just drop him a text." I was like, "Oh!" And before I knew it, I was like meeting up with Chris in a hotel lobby in Brisbane before his next flight to go to Sydney. And in between his sort of layover, I got to spend 2 hours chatting to Chris Do.
Wow!
Over coffee. There were some other guys there because he was doing like a sort of come and meet me before I go for the next flight. I got some time to kill, so I was kind of like sitting listening to absolutely everything and trying to get as much as I could out of the guy, and it was amazing. He when Dave met him at Adobe Max last year, Dave told Chris about my TikTok, which was sort of starting to ramp up then, and he got him to sign a book, Chris Do's book, and in the inscription it says, "Your TikToks suck, try harder please." It was a bit of a joke, right? So when I finally met Chris after this inscription, we did a little TikTok video, and he totally played along, and we got a picture of me punching him in the face for saying that in the book, and it was really cool. He's such a nice guy. Wow. Obviously hugely intimidating person when you see his videos and his socials. In person, an absolute
different
gentleman.
person, isn't he?
He's brilliant.
And a lot of that I do feel is persona, what you're putting out to the world, right? Because he talks about confidence, he talks about arrogance, he talks about, this is, and that's his shtick, right? He is completely different than Alan Peters or, Draplin or like varied, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But you're right. When you actually sit and talk to the gentleman, to the guy, he's completely different. It's not like he's a goof and he's clowning around. He's very smart and very serious, but he's a lot more, the intensity's down. He's a lot more approachable, right? So I do, he's terrified though.
I know. It's just like, I'm watching videos of him.
I was as well.
Just undressing people, and I'm like, oh.
I know, tearing people to shit. And I rocked up at that hotel and ordered a coffee, and I said hello, and he was like, hi, wasn't that friendly? And I was like, oh fucking hell, this is awkward. It's like a date we can set up via Instagram DMs. He does not want to see me. This is fucking painful. So I sat down and over the next sort of 2 hours it was. He just totally opened up, and there was no pressure. It wasn't being paid for it or anything like that. He was just sat down, we had a chat, and it was really cool. He gave me some advice on the business, and it was just amazing. And weirdly, now I'm going to get to see him again in October, because I'm going to Adobe Max as a speaker. So a year later, the dynamic has changed. I'm suddenly the disciple, and now I've gone up a rung in terms of like the pecking order.
Well,
so
that's
I'm going to be
huge,
speaking there
because
as well.
again, realistic. Okay, I know we've talked, and it sounds like you've been at this for like 10, 15 years, but COVID was only 2 years ago, 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, your climb has been. I mean, you're speaking at Adobe Max. Like, that's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
it's all thanks to social media and like social proof.
Yes.
So I think I'm a good designer. I think I've got my work kind of speaks for itself. But
End of interview, he says.
brutal. Hang up. No. So so I was really lucky. Okay, so I had a project. I entered a few logos into a book called the Logo Lounge, and I was lucky enough to get 3 accepted. And
Crazy.
That's a prestigious book. It's like a book that people use for inspiration across the world. Logo designers all over the world will be looking at this, and I was like, that is cool. I need to share this somewhere. I was on TikTok because I was posting like time-lapse videos of me making stuff in Adobe Illustrator, kind of just working in the software. My face wasn't on there really at all. I think there was like one video on there where I was in front of camera, but I decided just to pick the phone up and go, guys, check this out. I got in this book. It's fucking cool. I'm really excited. And 3 million people watched it on TikTok. So overnight, my account went from something like, I don't know, like a few hundred followers to like 15,000.
Incredible.
And immediately my inbox, because there was loads of content on my page with like time-lapse videos of logo concepts that I'd done, my inbox filled with leads overnight. And from that moment on, I've been booked out 3 months solid ever since. And that was January 2022. So TikTok kind of just sort of ramped up, and I thought, that's insane. I've just got more leads in a single day than I have over the last 6 months. Why have I not been doing this sooner? So I started putting way more effort into the video content, and basically just answering the questions that were coming in the comments. Like when someone asked me how I was doing stuff in Illustrator, I was like, what did you do? And I just started explaining it a bit more, talking about the logos that got into the book. And so, yeah, that kind of... that social trend, like the hype train, I had to kind of sort of keep going. Later that year, the same thing happened on Instagram. I did a video that hit 12 million views, and my Instagram account went from like, I think it was like 8,000 to 120,000 in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So yeah, that was mental, absolutely mental. So yeah, you're right. In the kind of grand scheme of things, it's the last couple of years is where it's really taken off for me on social media. But because of like social proof, when someone comes to your page and they see you've got 300,000 followers on Instagram, it's immediately like, oh, whoa, who's this guy? And then they take you a lot more seriously. And I think just because the nature of the content that I make now is all like me being the expert teaching the new designers. It's great for young designers, but it's also amazing when it comes to clients and client leads, because they see you as the teacher and the expert. Why not just go straight to the teacher? And yeah, my lead generation now is just like almost all through social media.
Wow. And it's funny because it's TikTok, like you said. Is that still primarily your between the two?
It's between the two, I'd say. I think it probably is slightly more through TikTok because of... I guess that's where I kind of got my start. But I started doing case study videos for like clients. I called it TikLiks, right? Yeah. TikTok client logo case studies. And some of those have really taken off. And when one of them hit more than a million views, and that one, when people see the case studies, and those kind of posts lead to huge amounts of leads. So they come in via mostly kind of social. Instagram, the leads are a little bit weaker because the DMs are a lot more open.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? People will kind of just message you through Instagram, and anybody can kind of get in touch with you. TikTok started doing that recently, but before they wouldn't be able to do that. In order to get in touch with you, they've got to go to your website and find out more.
Yeah.
And by doing that, they're immediately exposed to the rest of your work, and the leads that were coming through TikTok were bloody juicy. Like I was getting some really cool projects. So those first projects that I got from TikTok were so cool. I got to do a logo for a 3D print specialist. What else? I got like all sorts of bits and pieces. Just like I think the best one, which I did on the cheap, was a logo for a motor racing team in Texas. And in return for doing their T-shirt badge, they put my logo on the side of their race car.
Oh, saw
so
that.
That's
Cool.
That's an exchange of professional services that I'm happy to get on board with.
So this is kind of proof. I mean, the proof. I always thought that TikTok was the last place I ever wanted to put any effort, only because I felt I thought it was all kids, and little 12, 14-year-old girls, because that's what mine are, and that's where they spend it. But you're actually getting good qualified leads, work. You're making money from TikTok. So obviously, I was wrong.
Yeah.
But I mean, and again, and I think a lot of people are because I mean, TikTok has got this very different, and not that Instagram is much different.
No.
But I think Instagram seemed to have always been the grown-up version. Yeah. It's a lot more visual, where TikTok wasn't really taken as seriously as some of the other platforms.
Yeah, one of my colleagues, Michelle, I think, put it really well. She basically thinks that TikTok is more of gives you kind of more access to people. So it feels more behind the scenes. There's lots and lots of tradecraft on there and people showing how they do stuff. And there's clearly loads of small businesses, like TikTok for Business is this massive untapped resource where there are like-minded professionals wanting to start companies. And I think as well, because of COVID and people working from home and that influx of small businesses that were started up during the pandemic, that totally led into it. So the amount of juicy leads that come from the app, you'd be amazed. It's not all kids. It's not, it is a young app, obviously, but there are people out there with money to spend, and there are people out there making content like me, raking it in because they're actually focusing on their marketing as a kind of behind the scenes look at what they do, and again shows them as an expert in their industry by showing what they do behind the scenes, and it just leads to organic leads that way. It's amazing.
Absolutely. So I mean, this roller coaster ride for you has been going so fast. You haven't even had a chance to hit a gap, have you?
Do you mean
there's that lull everybody hits? I mean, the drop off rates are crazy. In our space, whether whether you're a freelancer, whether you're a graphic designer, or an entrepreneur. So a freelance designer has three things going against them, and then again, age also plays a factor to this as well. You haven't had a chance.
Oh my God. I know what you mean. I know what you mean about the guy, that window between your skills and your taste, and your taste as a graphic designer is not quite where your skills are. Luckily for me, I've always thought my designs are awesome, so I never felt bad about.
Of course,
I was so big fucking headed that it didn't really matter.
There's that brash TikTok attitude.
Yeah, you go. Confident wanker. I've basically I've not had that. I have in my former jobs. When I was working in magazines, that's where I felt that kind of out of my depth and the imposter syndrome and all of that. Because when I mentioned I worked in that place where I was learning print on the job, and I totally blagged that role, I was immediately sunk into the deep end. And a couple of instances in my early career, a few of my work was referred to as it looks like a PowerPoint deck and a shit one. Fuck me, that is brutal. So I've got a pretty thick skin,
PowerPoint
pretty
deck,
quick.
So wow.
Yeah. And it was it wasn't great, if I'm honest, but I learned quickly, and I took that feedback on and learned from it, and then when time came for me to become a freelancer, by that point I had enough experience behind me that it was kind of my speed and my efficiency in the software is what sold it for a lot of people. I was so fast in packages like Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign that when I went in as a freelancer to an agency, I was flying and turning work over so quickly they couldn't believe it. And that's been one of my strong suits, is I work really quickly, and this is totally fed into this sort of new the content I make for social media, because I was so good in the software. I can teach it. I can teach you how to work quicker in Illustrator, and that's also become part of my process in logo design now, is that I work insanely fast in the software to generate ideas quickly and iterate quickly inside Illustrator. So it's totally played into the freelance role.
Yeah. So without schooling, because you did not have any sort of design schooling, which is fine. So I'm assuming you are on the team of, you don't necessarily need formal education, formal design training in order to become a designer. Is this the case?
Yes and no. I still think like an education is important, and I was university educated, and I was lucky that a small part of my module was in that space. So I kind of got to, that was my sort of foot in the door almost. And that was something that kind of helped when I first got that job in graphic design. But I did learn everything outside of school, and I learned everything through like courses that I took after the fact, like a few small ones, and mostly on the job. So the hard part was getting that first job, and I did that by doing my own portfolio and a bit of the gift of the gab. And once I had my foot in the door that first time, it was a kind of a snowball effect. I just I think it was the fact that I'm so good with software, I'm really handy with computers, that it didn't take me long to pick up Photoshop. It didn't take me long to work in the new software. And when the print thing came in, I was flying. It wasn't too long before I was sort of running with the big boys. So yeah, I think it was kind of I think I was just sort of lucky in the fact that I got that first job, and that was my education, was learning from other people. So I'm a really big advocate of like things like live streams, because you can learn by watching other designers work, and we don't live in a world these days where we get to sit next to other designers, and everybody's working from home and working remotely. To learn, in the sort of best way that I feel is actually to learn from other people. The only way to do that is to watch like live streams, and I love live streaming. I do that with Adobe, and I'll go and do things like sketch to vector, and working up concepts in Adobe Illustrator live on camera, which is it's hugely fun.
So however, and I'm not throwing anything under the bus of what I'm not throwing aside anything you're saying, but you're learning the technical skills. You're learning the platforms. You were saying, you've learned so everything you've talked about, technically was technical. What about a big part of, design school, of course, is, the history of the design, the design principles. You even did a post once, I think you did a logo based on the perfect Fibonacci, ratios and such, right? Like that kind of stuff is usually, what people is. So again, you learned everything, live streams and people physically using the tools. That's fine. What about the other side? Where did you pick that up? Because in all fairness, I razz you about it, but your logos are beautiful. They're fantastic. Where is that education coming from? Because that you're not necessarily watching.
It's after the fact.
Yeah.
It's totally after the fact, because my first sort of foray into design was layout. It was digital advertising. It was email newsletters. It wasn't like rocket science, and there was a formula to it, and it was kind of easy to kind of pick up and sort of run with it. When it came to the more abstract stuff, I was learning via my other colleagues who were interested in it, and inside the sort of office space, most of the places that I worked at were really big on knowledge sharing.
Yes.
So when we had a team of designers, like maybe 4 of us, every week we would get together for half an hour and share something cool we found that week.
Yeah, cool.
That was massively important. So it was kind of a bit of pressure as well. You had to come up with something every week that was sort of the coolest thing of the day, and everyone was always trying to win with the who showed the coolest thing today. But that's how I learned, was like learning from other designers, and the things like the golden ratio and the principles behind design and color theory and all of that stuff, just from the hunger of the industry, just picking it up via online. And I learned in a world of YouTube tutorials and LinkedIn Learning, and lynda.com?
Lynda.com, yes.
Was where I learned most of my stuff. I was lucky enough to get access to that as well. So it was like I had enough skill to do okay as a junior designer, and then learn everything on the job. And all of that, the principal stuff after the fact. And then I was like, wow, of course it works that way. I'll use that, in my work going forward. And it just got better and better because of it.
Yeah. So that hunger, you attribute a lot of your success design-wise to that drive, that hunger of just, curiosity, this mad curiosity to keep improving.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also just like jealousy, seeing other designers who do work that's better than yours. I'm like, fucking hell, I need to up my game. That's half of it, honestly. Just trying
to
deconstruct
other
nature.
People's work and try to figure out how they do it.
Yes, absolutely. Especially like, when you see a logo design and you go, oh, I fucking could have done that. How did they come up with that?
Yep.
And then you look into more about the processing and the, generating ideas and how to do that. I was lucky, actually. I got taught a few sort of I got to be part of a course in my job at magazines, and it was all about ideation, how to be creative. Cool. And there's some amazing ideas in there, just around sort of word mapping. And one really good one was like, if you're coming up against a problem, you're trying to be creative and come up with a solution to something, flip it and do the negative of that. So let's say you want to do, I can't think of an example now, but you would take a concept and you don't have any ideas. You basically start working on the negative of that concept. So if there's a meeting that's going down a pretty dark path and people are just kind of shitting all over people's ideas, you can go, right, well, fuck it, we'll just be negative for half an hour. And then you take all of those ideas that are rubbish and the opposite of what you're after, and then at the end of it, flip them back into the positive and see if any sort of new ideas come out of it. So that was quite cool.
That is cool.
But again, that was lucky that I got that to be part of that course as part of my job. And I was also lucky that my job was big on training, so I got access to things like courses like that and LinkedIn Learning and lynda.com.
Yeah. So with this being said then, so you're cranking out these logos, you're cranking out logos for these customers. Because you're niching down into logos, what happens after the sale? Like after you hand that back, do they come back? Do they ask for more? Do you offer more? Or is that it?
That's done. They're dead to me after that. Yeah,
The scorched earth approach. I love it.
Yeah, give me my testimonial and get paid. See you later. No, it is like you said before. It's the upselling of services, and because I have a background of such a wide variety of things, I can offer the world. Like I can do you a website, I can do you a logo animation. Probably not as good as I actually outsource logo animation now because I'm too slow at it. I can do it. It takes me too long, so I will outsource that. But everything else, when it comes to building a brand, I can do. So I use the logo as like the start point of the sale, and then upsell services off the back of that. Okay, so if a new brand is starting and they need a new website, I can help them out with the background assets for the site. I can help them out with patterns, implement the new style into their site for them. Mm-hmm. So for something like as simple as a Squarespace site, I just basically set them up with a template and they can then go and run with it. And then all of the print bits and pieces, I can set them up with templates for their adverts or business cards or whatever they need to build their brand, and create them a sort of design system and the brand guidelines document on top of that in order to kind of like basically make them give them the best sort of starting point when it comes to their new logo.
So you're taking a logo project and you're blowing it up into a bigger deliverable package and such. You're not just delivering. Yes. And again, I think we talked about that last week, I guess, on the podcast. It's not just, here's your logo, see you later, give me $100,000 type idea, right? There is so much more rollout that people don't realize. They hear these stories about BP paying $200 million for a new logo, or, Pepsi.
For a JPEG.
Right. Yeah. It's not really how it works, but there is the backside on this that people, I don't think that they're trying hard enough for. They're just taking it for granted. They're kind of handing over that JPEG and saying, see you later, right?
Yeah.
But how does that... Go ahead.
That's exactly what I used to do. When I very first, one of my first logo projects, I was like, here's your JPEG in an email. That would be $50. And I was like, yes,
sweet.
Nailed it. I'm a graphic designer. Yeah. And then realized quickly, like it's about, it's the sort of the value that they feel like they're getting allows you to charge a bit more. Yeah. But, not just the logo files themselves, but everything it takes to actually build out this brand if you actually want to take it seriously. And in today's world where you need a website and you need a social media presence, you need a designer to help you with that. Absolutely. Otherwise it just looks like crap. And that's where I come in. So yeah, like I say, the logo designer niching thing is almost like a SEO tool, so that it's the sort of start point of that journey, and then I can build out from that and add more services on top of it. And some people like to call themselves like brand designers, and I specifically don't do that, because I find that calling myself a logo designer kind of cuts the bullshit, and they know what they're getting at the start of the project, and it's more of a sort of SEO friendly term. Like if you meet someone at a party and you say, what do you do? And you say, I'm a brand strategist, or and they have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah. Like, I design logos. Like, oh, right. Yeah, I get you. So I kind of treat that the same way with clients. Like it's the start of the process is I'm a logo designer. If you need more, I can help. Yes. But yeah, let's just start there. And that's how it's worked.
Yeah. So sustainability wise, long term though, like you're one person. right? And you are proudly one person, which is fantastic. Yeah. It's like you're a freelancer and you own that. How limiting is that going to be, though, if all of a sudden they keep coming back, a company, and you want to stay away from the retainer work, which is, and I can understand why in some points, but if they're coming back for more and more, how much? When's the breaking point?
Yeah, it's a tough one, and it's probably because the success of the logo design side of the freelance business is kind of relatively new.
Yeah.
I am in a bit of an inflection point right now. Like, do I scale this up and go agency and hire on a team, which I could, if I'm honest with you, I could do tomorrow.
Yep.
Just from the amount of leads that I'm getting through. And some of the leads I'm losing because my waitlist is too long. On the flip side, it's like, I love this freelance life, and I've given myself sort of like a lifestyle business now, and it's quite comfortable. And do I really need to scale this thing? I live a lovely life. I get to deal with clients directly. I do the work that I enjoy the most. Still working with, the people that I want to work with, and being really creative. And it's a toss up, it's like, I'd love to earn more money. There's other ways though I can do that. And I feel like I'm like a few years behind James Martin, right? He's a pal of mine now. It's great, being able to follow people like him, because I can just watch what he's doing.
Yep.
Just follow my sort of career path directly behind his on his bootstraps. So it's interesting. Like I've sort of started the process. Like I mentioned, I hired an assistant, and that was a big step for me. On a sort of a retainer basis. But it's been amazing having that resource, and I'm kind of kicking myself, like, why did I not do this sooner? Doing things like exporting logos, generating brand guidelines documents, rolling out social media templates and cover photos and things like that. That's not a great use of my time, and I've been completely controlling that whole process and doing everything myself. So when a logo project is ready to be delivered, it's another day or two before they can have it, because I'm doing everything on my own. Now I give that to my assistant, who also is in another time zone. So when I leave at the end of the day, and when I wake up the next morning, the job is done, which is even better. So it's just, I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't do that sooner. So yeah, like I say, it's like an inflection point right now. I could hire a few more people and just scale this thing up. Or do I kind of keep it comfortable and live the life that I'm living and enjoying right now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're like the poster child for freelance right now, right? And I think a lot of people look to you for that kind of motivation, that help, because you're showing it can be done. Do you think it changes the authenticity if you go the other way?
Yes and no. Probably not, I'd say, because there are freelancers out there who earn hundreds of thousands, if not millions, and there are ways to do it. But it's just the nature of my business at the minute is that I either raise my rates in order to kind of be more successful that way. And I found pricing is really kind of, it's a weird one. It's like a constantly in motion thing, like depending on, like, is there a recession going on? Is there a cost of living crisis? It's always adjusting, and I bring my rates up and bring them down, kind of depending on that. I found a bit of a sweet spot with it now. But yeah, it's interesting because, like, there are other routes that I could go down now that I'm in this sort of social media space to kind of like diversify my income a little bit. And it's slowly starting to happen with the education and the sort of the online training, and the bits and pieces that I do on social media is basically just showing people how to do stuff in Illustrator. Yeah. So I could do that more formally, and maybe get paid and do some digital products and that kind of thing. So like I say, it's so new to me that this is like one of the do I actually put more focus on this right now and kind of scale up that way, or do I go the other route and focus on the actual business and the agency side of things and make more money that way? So yeah, I'm completely undecided right now. It's really weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and James Martin has an interesting setup, right? Because although he has like a front where he almost looks and acts, and his own personal brand almost makes him feel like a one-man show. But then he's got Baby Giant, which is really the agency side, which it sounds like he's going to be growing a little bit as well with the, with, and how that's going. So it's he's kind of living the best of both right now.
Yeah. So there's me, there's James Martin, and there's Chris Do. Okay, and Chris Do was like a former agency owner,
Yep.
and now he's removed all the client work and has gone completely into the education and public speaking space. There's James Martin, who literally this morning announced on his newsletter
Yep.
that he's doing the same thing. He's going into the education space, but Baby Giant will still run.
Yep.
And then there's me down the bottom. It's like, can I teach you some stuff too? And I'm not quite sort of there yet as well. So yeah, I'm enjoying the client work at the minute. I'm going to keep it ticking.
Well,
over
and
for
you're
a bit
so
longer.
damn early at this, and this is where it's just mind blowing. Because again, your success in the short amount of time is, I mean, people work a lifetime to kind of get to this level where you do have really good quality, and again, but even more than that, your presence is massive. Like you are being asked to speak at places where people will, people like Christo work 20 years just to get that clout. So, I mean, is that do you ever kind of sit back and be like, how the hell this happened? Like, do you ever feel this imposter syndrome where you're like, I've just been at this for a little
Just a
while
bit.
and
Yeah,
I'm
fuck
right
yeah.
next to someone like Christo?
I know that was a huge moment for me being asked to speak there, and I'm not gonna lie, I went out there and fucking requested it. Like I messaged a lot of people in order to try and get there. It was mainly just because I wanted to go.
Yeah.
On the free. I didn't have to pay my ticket to LA to get there. And then it turns out I'm now a speaker, and I'm not only speaking, but I'm like straight after the keynote on day one, right in with a group of other people who, it's like literally straight after that huge auditorium where everyone's really hyped up and like, let's go. They're going to come out into my talk and be like, oh, what the fuck is this? So yes, there's an imposter syndrome. It's scary as hell.
Yeah.
And I'm working on the talk right now. And this morning, I caught up with the guys for the first time, the people that I'm sort of sharing that session with. And it's amazing. Like they're such a great bunch. And I've done a lot of work with Adobe over the last year or so. And they're an amazing partner. They've got great sort of culture. Their staff is so much fun to work with. And they've got money to spend, if I'm honest. They really are putting fistfuls of cash behind products like Adobe Express and then the new packages that are coming out and all of the AI stuff that's coming in. So they're just like the perfect partner. And being asked to speak at Max is just a dream come true. And yeah, when I saw my picture go up and I'm next to Aaron Draplin and underneath Chris Do, I was like, fuck me.
Right?
What have I done?
You burned it.
And I think that that's the perfect place on where to end our first half of our interview with the one and only Mr. James Barnard, our friend from Down Under. But not really Down Under, because he's actually from the UK and he's moved to Australia and, maybe pretends to be Australian, because it's cool. I don't know. But nonetheless, I love razzing the guy about it. The reality is he's a fantastic guy, and there was a lot of really good things that we talked about this first half. But two things that actually stood out for me were, number one, his path. His path was so different to becoming a graphic designer than a lot of other people's paths. Some people traditionally go to school and then after school, junior designer, into a regular designer, into senior designer, whatever. He went to school for something completely different, entered the job market, somehow found his way in through, hacking together a couple WordPress, themes and building intranets, and then just constantly works his way through to being, what he is today, which is, kind of a really popular celebrity designer, and he's actually a really good designer too. The key here isn't exactly the journey he took, but it was passion led. Like he said, he was so into it every single step, and his learning, came from, his just curiosity, his passion, and the fact that he'd watch other people and be like, shit, that's really good. Why can't I do that? So, number one, passion will take you everywhere in this space. It helped me, it's helped Sean, and it's obviously helped James. And number two, which I thought was really interesting, was the impact social media had on